Hey guys, it's Brittany and welcome to Brit's Book Blog. Today I'm doing a little bit of a wrap-up video for the month of April. I did the Owls as well, the Owls Magical Readathon. I didn't know about it until about a week into April, so I do have some books that don't really fall into the Owls category, so that's why this is kind of a combo deal. I had such high hopes for the Owls Magical Readathon because the entire month I was actually in quarantine, so I have no excuse for not completing it, but I did not do everything that I wish that I was going to do. But I will let you know how I did anyway. If you don't know what the Owls Magical Readathon is, I will link the description down below. It's a readathon that's hosted every year by Book Roast, and I think this is the third year that she's done it. And it's so great. So much thought goes into it. It was super fun to be a part of. I wished I had started, at the very beginning, and I wished I read more books at the end of it. I kind of fell off and didn't quite finish my goals, but that's okay. I still had so much fun. She really made it so you can meet so many people. I ended up buddy reading a couple books with people I've never met before. I made some new friends. It was such a fun experience. I didn't even care that I didn't finish some of my goals. She does do Newts too, I think in August, so I'm going to participate in that as well. But I had so many aspirations to do for the Owls, and I actually did not complete very many of them. It's a little bit gloomy out today, so I made myself some dalgona coffee. Kind of cheer me up a little. If you guys have not tried it, it's that whipped coffee that's all over like TikTok and YouTube. It's so good. Do yourself a favor and go make yourself some right now. A lot of people don't have instant coffee in their house, though. I had to order it. Okay, so first things first, I wanted to do every single prompt in the Owls Readathon, which is very aspirational, and I did not do that. But I didn't want to be an alchemist, so the alchemist is the career that has all of the prompts on it, and if you do it, you're the alchemist career. It's like the hardest career that you can do, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to I made my own route basically. So I wanted to do Magizoologist because I love animals and creatures and things, and so that's perfect for me. But that is only 4 prompts, so I needed to fill in my other prompts. So I chose Seer, which is another career, and that one has 3 prompts, which I was still missing a few. So there's 12 prompts total, and so that leaves me with 5 more prompts, and I just used, she had this year, apparently it was new, I haven't done it before so I didn't know, but she had some extracurricular activity type things, like extra courses and things, so it's not a whole career, you just do 1 or 2 of the prompts. So I was planning on doing Learn to Operate Locomotive Trains, Magical Shop Management. I wanted to do Merpeople Linguistics, the Dragon Tamer training, the Animagus training. I wanted to do everything. It was very aspirational at the beginning of this month. I came very close to getting my Magizoologist career done because I am in the middle of the book that would have finished it, but the month ended before I finished it. So I technically failed, but that's okay. I will still go over what I read. So the first one that I had to do on Magizoologist was Charms, and that is Lumos Maxima, so it was something with a white cover. And I actually found out that I have the Owl Crate edition of this book, and so it does have a white cover, but the normal cover is black. So it was kind of lucky that I was able to read this. But that is The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. This book is about a girl who is 17 years old, and she is trying to take over her family's business. They were gravediggers. Both her parents died, so she's trying to, earn enough to take care of her siblings in the house that they live in by being a gravedigger. But unfortunately, they live in a very small town, and not a lot of people need a gravedigger, to be honest. There's an enchanted forest on the outskirts of her town, and inside the enchanted forest, there are these things called bone houses, and they actually remind me of kind of like a zombie. So they are people that have died and they come back to life. So sometimes they can be skeletons, sometimes they still have skin, but like I said, it kind of reminds me of zombies. And all of a sudden, these bone houses are starting to come into the town, and nobody knows why. So she goes on this adventure to try and figure out how to break the curse or why they're cursed or what they need to do to stop these things from coming into their town. I thought this was an amazing book. I really enjoyed it. Owl Crate usually does a good job at picking books. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually buddy read this one with someone I'd never met before, and the only reason I found her was because of the owls. So my next owl was Herbology, and this is a book that had to start with the letter M. It couldn't be like the M or AM. It had to start with M. And so for that one, I picked Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This book is actually a nonfiction graphic novel. It is about a Jewish survivor in the Holocaust, and it's about a Jewish man and his son. And actually his son is the artist. So this is written by the son, and it's supposed to be his take on what happened, and he does it through animals a little bit. So in the story, they are mice and the Nazis are cats. I do try not to rate nonfiction books just because sometimes it's kind of a difficult thing to judge, but I did give this 5 stars just because I just felt like it was very powerful, and I think that he did such a good job. It's a really good read. It's just a really difficult read, and I am glad that I finally picked it up. I've had this on my shelves for a really long time, and it's a graphic novel, so usually those go by really fast. I've just kind of been putting it off because I know the contents are gonna be touchy, but I'm glad I picked it up. I do have number 2. I was planning on reading number 2 for a different part of the owls, and I never got around to it, so this one just happened to go for my career. Hilariously, for the last owl that I completed for my career, I read Night by O.W.L, which is another Holocaust book. I read this for Potions. Potions was the shrinking solution, so a book that was less than 150 pages. I had read Night in, I think it was my freshman year of high school, and I really wanted to reread it, so I decided since it's under 150 pages I was going to do that, so I really tortured myself because I read 2 Holocaust books in a row. And this one is another nonfiction story, which I also gave 5 stars because it's just amazing. I think that O.W.L does such a good job at relaying the information to you and making you feel something. And I am very happy that it's a trilogy, and he makes them in such short little snippets so you can kind of deal with it a little bit better than having to read an entire book of just the horrors that he went through. He's very good at storytelling, so that's why I really enjoyed this book as well. The last owl that I was supposed to do for Magizoologist was Care of Magical Creatures. That was a book that had a beak on the cover. For that one I was reading Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Of course I didn't finish it. I am probably halfway through. I kind of got into a reading slump halfway through April. I'll explain that later. So I actually didn't read much in the last 2 weeks of April, where I should have, and then I should have finished this, and I should have finished all of my goals, but I didn't. So I plan on finishing this month. So the other career that I was going to do was the Seer career, which had 3 prompts, and the only one that I did was astronomy, and this was where I ran into a problem. So this was the last book I read this month, and it's a book that you can only read at night, and there has been one book that I have been dying to read, and that is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I've been wanting to read this since I bought it. I needed to find a place to put it, and so I made it the owl where you only read it at night, which is kind of a blessing in disguise because otherwise I would have read this in one sitting. I ended up reading it over the course of a week because I would read it when the sun went down when I was tired, and then I would fall asleep, and then I would wake up and I couldn't pick it back up, so I'd have to wait until later that night and then read it and whatever. I adored this book. This is my favorite book by far that I read this month. Probably my favorite book that I read this year. That might be debatable. I've got a couple of them, but it is so good. So this is a story. I don't know if that's why I like it, but it's a story about a girl who wants to be a pilot so bad because her dad is a pilot, and then something happens in a battle. Her dad gets labeled a coward and ends up getting shot down in the battle, And so she is now the daughter of a coward who wants to be a pilot just like her dad, and society just will not let her live. She lives on a planet called Detritus where they all live underground, and they're constantly being attacked by these aliens that keep coming down, and that's all she's wanted to do forever. And like I said, society is just not okay with that. And I have never read Brandon Sanderson before, but this is not going to be the last time I read him because he is hilarious. He is so funny, and it's just so great. It's so funny. This is such an amazing book, and that is why I think I didn't finish. After this book, I didn't want to read anything else. I wanted to go directly back into this story. I loved it so much I made my dad read it. He loved it. He gave it 5 stars. I don't know if I love it so much because I want to be a pilot. That's what I'm in school for. I kind of see myself in this situation. Or if he just does such an amazing job. I just love it. He even says in the very end he had a couple of military pilots help him with some of the pilot terminology. And he is spot on. It is so accurate. It is amazing. And you don't have to know anything about planes to read it. It's not like a bunch of scientific pilot stuff. But I was like, oh yeah, that is exactly how it goes. It was so good. Right now I'm actually reading the second one because I've been waiting. My dad has already finished the second one and he keeps bugging me. He's like, Brittany, where are you? You need to read the second one. And so that was my very first goal of May, was to pick up the second one. And so I have. So this one, 5 out of 5 stars. Now, even though I didn't finish any of the careers for my owls, I did do a couple of the little extracurricular things. It was labeled courses, seminars, and training programs. So I did finish a couple of those. So the first one that I did was the Dragon Tamer training. And for this one, all you had to do was read a book with a dragon in it, which is extremely easy for me because I love dragons. For that prompt, I chose Talon by Julie Kagawa, and I have had this on my shelf literally for ages, years. I think I've probably had this on my shelf since high school. This is about kind of a dragon society where the people who are dragons, they're not people, they're dragons, but they change into people and they can change into dragons and so forth. So it's kind of like were-dragons. And I thought it was really good. I think it's probably for a younger generation. I do think I probably would have loved this when I bought it. And I loved it now. I thought it was good too. I do know that some of the reviews say it's a little bit boring, and maybe that's just because it is, I think, for a younger generation, maybe like 16, 17, 18-year-old type generation, just because it's got like that teenagery drama in it. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I even might pick up the second one just because I really enjoyed the idea of people changing into dragons and trying to train for this whole underground thing where there's so many dragons and they're trying to live amongst society. I thought it was interesting, and I love the cover, so that would be cool to have all of these on my shelf. I am so shallow, it's fine. So I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. So for Magical Shop Management, I actually did get that one done as well. I read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, and actually one of the main reasons that I read this book was because I wanted to watch the show. And I've been really into reading the books before I watch the show or movie. I like the book to movie adaptations just to see kind of how it goes. And I gave the book 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely amazing, which these are books I don't normally read. I've never read Celeste Ng before, but I heard that she is really good at storytelling, and she is. I thought it was amazing. This book is about a suburb of Cleveland called Shaker Heights, where everything is literally perfect. Like, everything has its place. There is, the grass is perfectly green. There is no trash cans on the outside of the houses. Like, that only is in the back. You're not allowed to see trash. It's like the perfect place. And this mom, who is an artist, her name is Mia, moves in with her daughter Pearl. And they are kind of a little bit different than your typical family that would live in Shaker Heights. They move all over the place because her mom is an artist and likes to sell things. Once she's done with a place, she moves. And she finally wants to set roots a little bit for Pearl's sake, because Pearl has been up and moved so many times that she decides to kind of stay in Shaker Heights. And, you know, when I was reading the synopsis, I was like, this is probably going to be the most boring book I've ever read, but so much stuff happens. There's like an adoption, and there is a fire, and there's just so many things, so dramatic. And I really, really liked it. I thought it was amazing. And then I watched the show. I don't like the show. They changed a lot of things. A couple of the changes I really enjoy, but most of them I did not. I did not like. So I like the actresses that play in the show. I thought they did a good job playing the person that I imagined, but I don't like the show. Let me know if you have made that comparison and tell me what you think. Do you like the show? I really loved the book, and I think it's because I'm comparing it to the book. I don't know what I would think if I watched the show without reading the book. I wonder if I would like it more. I don't know. So another course that I did was learn to operate locomotive trains, and this one had 2 prompts. It was Defense Against the Dark Arts and Muggle Studies. So for Muggle Studies, I had to read a book set in the perspective of a Muggle. So that is where I read Where the Forest Meets the Stars by Glendy Van Dara. So this book was really interesting. It's kind of about this woman who is living in a cabin type home just for the summer so she can complete this research study that she's doing on birds for her degree. She lives kind of far away from the other person that lives out in these woods, but it's kind of about both of them becoming friends. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this little girl shows up. She's not wearing shoes, and she's like, hey, I'm here from a different planet, and I need to see 5 miracles before I go home. They try to tell the police about her. They try to find where she lives, and she's like, I don't live anywhere. I'm from a different planet. I'm trying to tell you. Every time they try to get the police involved, she runs away. So they kind of end up taking her in a little bit, and a lot of stuff happens, but it's so interesting. It was such a good book. I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars as well. I really thought this was just a cute read. I ended up listening to it. It's actually free on Kindle Unlimited if you have that. The Defense Against the Dark Arts is a book set at sea or set at the coast, and for that one I read The Deep by Rivers Solomon. For The Deep, I actually ended up listening to this book, and it's a novella, so it was quite short. It's actually about water-breathing descendants of African slave women, so it's kind of when slavery was around and they would just push pregnant women over the sides of the ships because they're not supposed to be pregnant. And so the children of those slave women became mer people and like live way down deep so they don't have to interact with anyone ever. They kind of have this weird thing where they don't want to bear the memories of all of their ancestors. So this is years later, but they don't want to have to remember everything. So they pick one person in their society to hold all of the memories, and it just weighs down on them. So our main character, she is the one that has to hold all the memories. She was chosen and she hates it because it's sad and she has to remember it, and that's all she remembers. And so it's kind of about her, coming to terms with either having to keep the memories or having to live a free life. Like, it's kind of a fork in the road. And it was such a short read. I really enjoyed it. I know there are a few bad reviews on this book, and I think that is because it is so short. So that is my one complaint. I think it should have been longer because there were a couple of times they're trying to squeeze so much stuff into one that it would bounce back and forth and I would get lost. And so I would have to go back a little bit and try and figure out what they were talking about. I don't know if you read it, if it would be different if they label each section, but listening to it, sometimes I did get lost. But even though I had that little technical issue, the story was amazing. I loved it so much. So I probably would have given it 3 stars, but the story just outweighed the problem so much that I gave it 4. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I think it's worth the read. I mean, it's such a short read anyway, and it's so interesting. I mean, it's just a new take on something I've never heard of before. And so if you're bored and you just want something to listen to quickly, I would definitely give this a go. Maybe just give it a shot. I actually read a couple of these books before I knew about owls. They actually ended up fitting into some of the prompts, so I used them anyway because I read them in April. There is one that didn't fit in any prompts. That is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. If you have never read this, I have to reread it every once in a while because the art is amazing. It is a graphic novel, and it's kind of a horror story type graphic novel. It's got a bunch of stories in here. It reminds me of like scary stories to read in the dark if you ever read those when you were young, but in picture form. So the art style's amazing, and it's very creepy, gives you chills, and I like to reread it to kind of reset. She is so good. She even has a website that's interactive where she has some stories that aren't in her books that you can go on and just mess around. I really think Emily Carroll does such a good job, and I would highly recommend this. This is a 5 out of 5 stars. It's 5 out of 5 stars every time I read it. I finished Skyward on April 14th, and I didn't finish any other books. But I did read half of Six of Crows, and I read half of All the Stars and Teeth. And so I did get some reading in. I just didn't finish any books after Skyward. So at the end of April, I ended up reading 8 books, and I only ended up finishing 3 of the courses, seminars, and training sessions. I didn't end up doing my career, which is okay with me because, like I said, I had a blast doing it anyway. Maybe next year I will be better about it, but I just don't understand. I was under quarantine all of April. So if it was going to get done at some point, it should have been this year, but stuff happens, you know? And that is my April wrap up. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!